Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's NBA Sharp Betting Breakdown here on the Advantage Sports Betting Podcast. It is Monday, December 30th. We are starting off a strong week to start the end of the year to the beginning of the year. We will be going all week here on the podcast. And big news for today. It's the Kings' birthday. So you know what that means. We're going to dominate this card. If Lakers were playing, we'd be betting the house on the Lakers, but we're not betting the house on anything because we do things responsibly. But it's LeBron James' birthday. You know that gets me hyped, energized, and feeling good because I love LeBron. We make so much money off him off the years. This year might actually be better to fade him, but story for another time. All right. We are starting things off. 7-game NBA slate to go through. We are starting things off with the Knicks at the Washington Wizards. This is a repeat matchup of something that happened about a week ago was when these teams played. The Wizards would end up playing the Knicks very well. The Knicks were in a 3 games in 4 nights spot in the schedule. The Wizards were actually on the road then. This was in New York. And the Wizards were catching like 14 or something. And they would cover and only lose by 4, and it would go down to the wire. Now, the Knicks catching 11.5 here on the spread, a total of 229.5. These numbers have been pretty stagnant since the open here at FanDuel. The total has moved around at other places. It started off at 228.5, pretty much consensus. It has climbed up to where there's 231.5 on the board right now. We see 230.5 at DraftKings, 231.5 at BetMGM, 231 at Circa. So you could still make the case that betting this over 229.5 is still a good move. And you could also make the case that betting the under 231.5 at BetMGM is a good move. So really, regardless how you feel, if you want to tack on the over, which is the bulk of my position right now on a 228.5, and play at 1 point less, that's fine. I also think 231.5 is the resistance point where it's not going to get any higher than that. So I mean, you're floating in this zone where maybe two sides and best numbers on both sides, considering where this market stands, are decent positions to have. I think the Knicks, this is a solid Knicks spot for them. We do have Kyle Kuzma returning for the Wizards, which is going to drive down the spread a little bit. But again, schedule-wise, this is a better spot for the New York Knicks. I know Brunson is coming off of having 55 points and doing a lot of the lifting for his team. However, this is not as daunting of a 3 games in 4 nights schedule spot for New York. So I have no plays on the side, but I wouldn't be rushing back to grab Washington just because they covered last time and Kuzma is back in. Jordan Poole is questionable. Jalen Brunson's questionable. I suspect they both play. Marvin Bagley and Mitchell Robinson remain out. Jason says, get down on it. And Ian says, happy 40th birthday to King James. 40. Gray beards, gray hair, dominating in Madden, and still playing basketball at what? A top 10 level in the game right now. He went through that tough stretch when the Lakers had a daunting like 5 games and 7 night stretch. And everyone's like, LeBron's plus minus, his box score plus minus, his expected plus minus is the worst it's ever been for a 10-game stretch. Well, it was the worst schedule spot you could have possibly drawn up for a 39 turning 40-year-old. I was surprised to see it be the worst 10-game stretch of his career, but I'm not surprised to see him rebounded at all on the other side of the break of the NBA Cup stuff. But anyways, no LeBron talk today. I'll try and stay away from it. Maybe a little bit more LeBron talk. Chicago Bulls are playing at the Charlotte Hornets. This line has been hanging around 5.5, and now it has moved to 5, a total of 225.5. Let's pull up the injury report for this game. We see that we have probable Josh Giddey and Zach LaVine. That is going to majorly impact the total. Josh Giddey is probably, like Damian Lillard, one of the strongest over players in the league. Zach LaVine, a very efficient scorer this year on his, 22 a game. Jalen Smith, and then doubtful LaMelo, Caleb Martin, Brandon Miller. Wow. So you get all of the studs for the Hornets besides Bridges going doubtful for this game. It is going to be a tough spot to want to back the Charlotte Hornets. I'm seeing that injury report, very interested in backing the Chicago Bulls. People have referred to me as the Bulls whisperer this year because I've been calling a lot of their games correctly. I feel like I have to sneeze so bad. Oh my God. It's like when you have to sneeze, but it won't come out and it just stings. This is frustrating. Okay. This Bulls line right now, you have Circa at -4.5, BetMGM 4.5, Caesars 4.5. So it is coming from 5.5 back down the other way. There is still a remaining plus 5.5 at Bet Rivers if you're just trying to pick up the latest market direction and beat the sharpest books right now, which are Bookmaker 4.5, like I said, Circa 4.5, some offshores 4.5, or some fives, but there's no more 5.5s remaining besides Bet Rivers. So if you want to pick up the latest market direction, you'd go over to Bet Rivers and take the plus 5.5 at -112. However, not a side that I want to back the Charlotte Hornets in this game. I would love to back the Chicago Bulls. Let's see if it gets down to 4. Let's see if this becomes news based on their injury report. Maybe this is Zach LaVine going more towards doubtful. We will see. You look at the total and you see it coming back down to 225.5. This thing was all the way at 228 just a few hours ago. So 2.5 points of movement towards the under, a point of movement back towards the Charlotte Hornets. Questionable given the injury report. So I honestly don't really know how to bet into that right now. A consensus 225.5 in the totals market as it's come down from 228. I would be watching that Bulls injury report thinking maybe something pops up that we haven't yet known about, as shoot around will start in about an hour or two. But otherwise, the Bulls at this number is a number that I would like to back if they're full at a 4.5, not a 5. The Clippers take on the Pelicans. Whoa, I'm surprised to see a 4.5 here. This one also, Pelicans have been a team that has consistently taken late steam. The opening market, everyone wants to fade the Pelicans because they think they suck, and they look at their season splits and they do suck. And then you get to realize, well, this isn't really the team that's being represented by their season-long splits, because DeJounte Murray speeds up their pace tremendously. CJ McCollum gives them an isolation weapon. Trey Murphy gives them a shooter. So like now that they've returned some of their guys, they're way, way, way more what's the word that I'm looking for? Like approachable in the betting market. There's reason for sharps to come into these waters thinking they're going to start to deviate away from their stats and improve. And that has happened certainly in a pace scenario. So this open was 221.5 and 219.5 at different books. It settles in the middle at 220.5. So not really much of a direction to grab onto in that regard. The Clippers, though, coming down from what was at one point a 7 in the market back down to a 4.5. Who's popping up on this injury report? Nobody. That's unexpected. Kevin Porter Jr. in. Yves Missi, questionable and out. Kawhi, who's been practicing. Man, Alvarado, Zion, and Ingram. So nothing new that's come here, and yet the line is swinging in a big way. Another game where the Pelicans are taking the secondary wave of movement, and it's louder than the initial movement. So start to beware of that. Someone asked me yesterday in the WHOP channel if I wanted to take Clippers at -5.5. And I said I was holding off on that. They did, and it would reach out to 7. And now it's back to 4.5. And the reason I cited was because, hey, Pelicans have been taking some later steam. So I'm not quick to jump on a fading Pelicans move right now at an opening number. And so it's good to know that and use this for whatever the next Pelicans game is. When they come on the schedule in a day or two, let me scroll down and try and find it. They play January 1st at the Miami Heat. So I guess we'll learn some suspensions likely for Miami after that brawl with Houston. And then we'll see some lines come out after this game for that Wednesday game, maybe Tuesday afternoon. And then we will see. We'll see which way the market goes. But I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes another Pelican spot to jump in, especially if the number starts going the other direction at the beginning. The Denver Nuggets are playing the Utah Jazz. This game takes place in Utah. Elevation meets elevation. We're also reaching that time of the year as the calendar turns to January 1, where you would say players are definitely in game shape. definitely starting to get used to NBA travel, no early season rust stuff, and therefore altitude somewhat becomes less of an advantage. So the early season home court advantage for Denver and Utah are stronger because playing in altitude is harder when you have your early season legs and wind under you. When you are in mid-season form, as it is so often said, you see less of the effect of the altitude. That's not saying it's still of no effect, but it's just lessened in the effect. Now we see Denver -7 points in Utah. Opening line was 8.5, has come down to 7. Over has taken some action as well. The total market up to 239.5. Not really sure totals markets for Nuggets can get high enough right now. They all seem to be moving towards the over from the open considerably. Like considerably. I know both of those games went under against the Phoenix Suns. That's because the Phoenix Suns pace has died in recent weeks, but the Denver Nuggets cannot be playing faster. Their offense cannot be more efficient, and their defense cannot be more of a sieve. So you get those three combinations, and it's essentially a team of Josh Giddey and Damian Lillard, where you got 5 over players on the court at the same time, especially with Aaron Gordon missing defensively as well. He helps so much on the help defense side, filling in the gaps, helping Jokic, who's much better defender than he gets credit for. It becomes a cohesive unit. Now, when you miss that piece, it definitely takes away, and it probably forces Jokic to play more a bit offensively. So I don't think it drastically reduces their scoring capabilities. Utah, like I said, takes steam in this spot. Colin Sexton in, Keontae George questionable. When the Jazz are home and have the combination of Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson off the bench, they have a speedy point guard at all times. They could attack teams from the perimeter. They have actually some guys to play inside out as well with Markkanen and Kessler. The Jazz team is like that team that wants to tank, but is just simply not bad enough. So the early season Jazz was miserable because they were brutally injured. Now that they've gotten Lowry back, now that they've gotten Sexton back, now that they've gotten Clarkson back, they all missed time throughout the season, and they're all back and playing. So look for the Jazz to actually start similar to the Pelicans, start playing a little bit better at the start of the new year. If you've been on an under on the Jazz season win total, shit looks great. Like that, you have so much baked in room from how they started off the season and how they probably likely try and end the season as well, that I think you're swimming with a Utah Jazz under. But this is the time where I think you'd look to take them with points in certain situations. Now this game at the 7, now this game all the way up to 239.5. I would say it's probably pretty priced out. But Utah and the over have been the market sides. Denver is just not a team that I've been trusting. Let me pull up the Denver Nuggets schedule. I know the win-loss column doesn't totally reflect how tight some of these games have been and how the Nuggets just haven't seemed to find their footing in the last few weeks. They lose to the Cavaliers at home. They lose to the Suns on Christmas Day, which ended in a 10-point game, but they were getting destroyed for the bulk of that game. They beat the Nuggets. I mean, they beat the Suns a few days earlier. They had that overtime win against the Pelicans where they had to come from behind to force overtime. They had the loss to the Trailblazers. They beat the Kings by 1 point after they were down 20. So it's just like they lost to the Wizards. It's just like recently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 questionable games in like their last 10 for the Denver Nuggets. So again, Utah getting healthier. Denver playing questionable in 60% of their last 10 games. Not having Aaron Gordon out there for the Denver side. A lot of these things are going to add up. Is Aaron Gordon out there? No, still out, obviously. All right. A lot of these things are going to light up where if you could have gotten to plus 8.5 early, it made a lot of sense on the Utah side. Now I don't think it's actionable in either direction. Unless you want, maybe you could still play Utah. That would be the only thing I would consider because these Denver Nuggets games are closer. They have more games within their like lower key number sets because all of their games seem to end in 2 points. We pulled the key numbers set for just the Denver Nuggets this season and the last 3 seasons. The only anomaly for them was that they played more games that end in the number 2. That one was significantly higher than it is in other spots for other teams, which makes sense because they're always coming down to the wire, it seems. So, like, if you like the Denver Nuggets -7, you might want to start splitting your exposure between playing a Denver Nuggets -7 and playing half of it on the money line and just taking some insurance, even though you're paying for it and you're paying nearly a -300. Sure, split up your unit, play half and half. Uh, I don't think that's the worst idea to buy some insurance if you're playing a longer Nuggets spread favorite. The Philadelphia 76ers are at the Portland Trailblazers. We know that the 3 key 76ers are probably going to be active for this game. Joel Embiid is on the injury report listed as questionable. However, his prop market is priced. He played last game, and everything tracks that he should play again tonight. Eric Gordon, Andre Drummond. I think Gordon's questionable. I don't think Drummond's expected to play. And on the Portland side, I would expect Tumani Kamara probably out. The other ones I'm not totally sure of. They're all listed as questionable, lengthy questionable list. The only person out is KJ Martin, Kenyon Martin Jr. You know, it's funny that he goes by KJ Martin, but he's Kenyon Martin Jr. And some people started calling him KJ Martin Jr. And I'm like, no. Now you're calling him Kenyon Jr. Martin Jr. It's like, I grew up with Nets fatheads on my wall. So Kenyon with the tattoos of some lips on his neck. I used to want to kiss the guy because he would score so many points for my team. No, I'm kidding. Don't mess up KJ Martin Jr. We love Kenyon over here. All right, so I think this is a strong Philadelphia 76ers spot. I bet the 76ers at -4.5. We are seeing this now push out to 6s, even 6.5s on the board. So you get 5.5 here at FanDuel, 6 at Circa, 6 at DraftKings, 6.5 MGM, 6 at Caesars, 6 at Bet365, 6 -113 at Bookmaker. You get a -5.5 remaining at Bet Rivers and FanDuel. Bet Rivers -109, FanDuel -112. Both would be definitely actionable right now, for sure. For sure. If you see this line moving consensus onto a 6, and you could get a fairly priced 5.5 in the market, we know this based on numbers alone. Fuck the teams. I don't care who's playing. I don't care who's home and away. I don't care what the injury report says. I care what the market is telling me, and I take my own opinion out and I throw it in the dumpster because a price-efficient market is smarter than my basketball opinions when this is based on algorithms and tons of bettors and simulations and so much data sets that it's far beyond what I use, that then sometimes you just need to listen to what the market is saying. And right now, you got a line that was 4.5 last night at a lot of books, and it's now 6 and starting to be 6.5. And you know, over the last 3 years, 6 is the most common outcome in the NBA. So if there's a floating 5.5, which there is at FanDuel, if there's a floating 5.5, which there is at Bet Rivers, and you're looking at Circa, and you're looking at Bookmaker, and you're looking at the offshores, and you're seeing all 6s, you're looking at DraftKings 6 -115 now, you're looking at BetMGM -6.5. Then Bet Rivers is moving the line right now. That's why you should take it. And if you could get that half point, if you could close on a 6 and you have a 5.5, you have a plus EV ticket regardless of the situation. You could also do that on the flip side. If all of these numbers were at 6.5 or 7 and they started coming down and they were getting to 5.5, and I said you could take a remaining plus 6.5 and take the market direction the other way and still beat the 6, then that would also be worth doing. Now the Bet Rivers -5.5 is -113. So FanDuel now becomes the best line with a -112 available on the 5.5. Still actionable if you get a -5.5 for -115 or better on the 76er side. This team is actually playing in desperation mode in late December. It is good to fucking see from this team to wake up a little bit and play good basketball. They sometimes even seem to play better basketball when Embiid's off the court. Like, for real. However, when he's on the court, he's such an isolation monster. that we like you back him at all costs, especially with the Portland Trailblazers missing some of their interior defenders, right? Robert Williams is one on the injury report, questionable, that I probably expect out. I believe Donovan Clingan is like lengthy injury right now, if I'm not mistaken. Is he? I'm checking on that, so I'm not wrong. Oh, he's back. Oh, okay. Welcome back, Clingan. He's back, but he only played 12 minutes last game, 14 minutes the game prior. So probably a reduced minutes for Clingan right now. That's how I'm reading this game. You absolutely still play a minus 5.5 if you take it. I also played the under 222.5. You know, when Embiid is active, I love to look for those Philadelphia 76ers unders. This has been moving towards the under, but right now you still have the opening line available right now. Portland Trailblazers on the other side, they don't play a fast enough pace. They don't have efficient enough shooters to scare me off this position at all. In fact, the return of Clingan and the fact that Ayton is going to be active makes me like the fact that they have multiple rim protectors for this under situation where there's probably not elite shooting on either side of the card. Obviously, Maxey does speed up the pace when he plays for the 76ers. Paul George does add a great amount of shooting efficiency, shooting space. He also knows how to get to the line where he's very efficient. So those are some over players. However, generally under spots for 76ers. Let's see. They are 15 and 14 to the over, actually. Surprising to see. But all of their lines have been moving down. So if you've been betting towards the movement and not just playing closing lines, I would suspect that record flips a little bit and it becomes probably pretty flat in either direction. The Dallas Mavericks are taking on the Sacramento Kings. Now, the Sacramento Kings are struggling right now, firing Mike Brown and getting fired back from the rest of the league, from everyone respected around the league, clapping back at the Sacramento Kings, from Mike Malone chiming in, to Ty Lue chiming in. So much thoughts about Mike Brown being let go. It was after he ran a hard 1.5, 2 hour practice and then went and spoke to the media for 20 minutes and then went to go, you know, the team was going to get on the plane and Mike Brown doesn't get on the plane. So not only a bad firing that probably he didn't lose the locker room, he called out De'Aaron Fox for the exact play that we called out De'Aaron Fox for on this podcast last week. Now, Mike Brown knows more basketball than I'll ever, like, what's the expression? Mike Brown's forgotten more basketball than I will ever know. And so if I'm able to say it and show up the clip and say, this is exactly what happened wrong with De'Aaron Fox being in the wrong position, it should be obvious. And it's not that crazy for a coach to say it to the media. And I don't really think that's the reason, but I do think that was the tipping point to call out De'Aaron Fox and the Kings wanting to do everything they could to have kept Fox happy while he's kind of dealing with his extension stuff. Now, do I think it's the right move? No. Now you go to Doug Christie, who doesn't have head coaching experience in the middle of the season where the Kings are kind of struggling and you want to turn the tide the right way. I absolutely would have kept Mike Brown, who's been shown to steady the ship over the last few years. I think it's ridiculous that they fired Mike Brown. That being said, I want to bet into it. I want to fade the team that seems to be falling apart. This Mavericks team, on the other hand, obviously they're going to be dealing with some suspensions. Najee Marshall suspended 4 games. Luka Doncic out with the calf injury. But again, PJ Washington is back. Questionable Derek Lively. I would love that one to break towards in, and you will see a wave of Mavericks money come in because Kyrie's probably the best player on the court between these two teams. And the whole Dallas team is cohesive around it. They have a good chemistry in the locker room, and the Kings are falling apart at the seams. You look at the coaching advantage, give me Jay Kidd as a head coach over Doug Christie 10 out of 10 times to scheme up the right adjustment, to make the right, halftime or third quarter or timeout call in the fourth quarter. I played the Dallas money line here. Now, I might even tack on some 3.5 or 4s as it's coming. There was 4.5 consensus across the board last night. Now we're seeing 3.5 Mavericks plus 3.5 FanDuel, plus 3.5 DraftKings, plus 3.5 BetMGM, plus 3.5 Bet365, plus 3.5 starting to show up at the offshores. Mainly a consensus 3.5 with some straggling 4s still the other direction. So maybe I pick off a remaining +4 as well and take some points for a little bit of exposure. But I played a half unit on the money line going, hey, best player, better coach, and more cohesive role players are all on the Dallas side. The DeRozan fit doesn't totally work with Fox and Monk and Murray and Sabonis on the court. That team lacks defense. And the Mavericks will play you with some straps. And clearly they will come to fight. Let that be known by Najee Marshall's 4-game suspension. So again, Mavericks money line here for me. In the total, let me check on the way that it is moved. Bouncing total started at 228.5, went up to 231.5, is back down to 229.5. Is 228.5 pretty much everywhere else, circa 228.5. Same thing. Circa started at 228.5, went up to 233. Wow. It's back down to 228.5. There are so many movements on the screen from Circa, which is why I've said in previous podcasts, they are a sharp book that you definitely need to refer to where their lines are to understand market stuff. However, if you're blindly following Circa's lines with where to bet in other directions, you will get so caught up in a web of buying, selling, playing back, trying to keep up. It's so hard to understand because they're a book that genuinely takes action and moves based on action. They definitely move on air a lot too, but I'd say the vast majority of the other books move even more on air with their line movements, not based on some bet that just came in. So Circle will take an over bet and move the line up. Circle will take another over bet and move the line up. Then they'll take an under bet and move the line back down. Okay, and then they'll catch up on air with some other lines too, based on the books. So I just don't think it's worth overly reading into every move from one book. That's why you need to have a collection of sharp books that you refer to. When I call out Circa, when I call out Bookmaker, when I call out certain offshores that I'm looking at, Pinnacle would be one to consider for that purpose as well, to say, okay, if you could track where these books, if they're at a consensus point and something else is different, that would be, certainly worth considering. However, for this one, you have 229, 228, 228.5 for the sharp books that are Circa, Bookmaker, offshores in that respect. And then you have 228.5 pretty much everywhere else. So where do you go for market direction? If that's the matching number, there's an over number and there's an under number. You probably stay away if you're just doing this based on market direction and not bringing in other factors. If you were starting to bring in other factors, obviously the Mavericks offense is less efficient without Luka. They probably play at a higher pace with Kyrie manning the helm. Kings have been playing at a blistering pace recently. Their efficiency has very much dipped. I would lean towards the over for basketball reasons right now. But again, movement becomes very hard to understand. All right, that works our way through we have one more game, Cavaliers and Warriors. And then we got a handful of questions, comments in the chat that I will go over. If you have anything else that you want to drop in the chat, please send it in now. And I will get to it in a few minutes. Cavaliers at the Warriors, -4 on the screen. I believe the opening was 3.5, moved out to 4.5, and is back to 4. So a lot of consensus lines this morning, a lot of reaching a point where it got to its resistance point. It's starting to come back the other direction. So the 4s, 4.5s still on the board, mainly 4.5. So definitely been a Cavs market. There's a +5 at Bet Rivers, -5 on the Cavaliers side. This has definitely been an early Cavs market. They are coming off of the win against Denver on the road. Now they take the Golden State Warriors, who are faltering a little bit. They had that late win over the Suns, a little bit of a comeback win over the Phoenix Suns for the Warriors, but ultimately they have not been playing their best basketball. You see Draymond screaming at Buddy Hield and then telling the press conference after the game, sometime that's warranted. To be honest, wholeheartedly agree. Draymond can be a bit annoying, but in a team context, in a team that wants to be very competitive, You have to be able to get yelled at, and you have to be able to yell at other people. That's like kind of a life thing. You got to be able to give criticism, take criticism, have hard conversations, and get over the hump with that shit. You let that shit linger, it becomes toxic. Total movement 231.5 as the open has come down to 229. Clearly an under spot for this game. That's mainly based on the Warriors and their offensive woes and some of their ability to switch and play good defense. Cavaliers have been super efficient on offense and high pace this year. So I don't really want to fade and play Cavaliers unders right now. However, they did return Dean Wade, and having that length back in the starting lineup has shown to be really important for their defense. So now the Cavaliers are starting 3 7-footers and Donovan Mitchell with a 6'10" wingspan. So defensively, they completely cover for the little bit of the perimeter defense, height being a little lower in Garland and Mitchell. They have so much length defensively. All right, that makes us through every game. I got no bets on that game. I would say best numbers on either side work. I will go through my WHOP bets on the card. Ian calls me out and says I said the word lean. Oh, I am the worst. You guys know what I mean when I said lean. We've changed the definition around here. That lean is something I'm looking at and considering playing, but I have not played it yet. But ultimately, I haven't played it yet because I haven't thought it's worth playing. So therefore, the lean would be don't play it right now. All right, let's share the WHOP bets, and we will go through them. Dallas Mavericks money line. I got it at plus 140. You could find slightly better prices because it went out towards the Kings. It's now coming back towards Dallas. I think that's going to close right around it or not slightly ahead. Dallas Mavericks money line, half a unit. 76ers minus 4.5. If you're playing it now and you're at the minus 5.5 with knowing that it's going to 6, you could honestly still play it for a full unit, understanding that market value. I played back a quarter of a unit on the Portland Trailblazers plus 6 because the whole market was at 5. So I took a chunk at 4.5, a small playback at 6. Right now, I would just recommend a directional play on Philadelphia 76ers minus 5.5 and maybe the under as well. New York Knicks over 228.5. If you were going to play that in either direction, the 229.5, that is the best number at FanDuel towards the over, or the under at 231.5, which seems to be its resistance point. No matter how you feel in that game, there are good numbers that exist on the board 2 points away from each other. So you probably can get ahead in either direction. And then in the football game tonight, I did bet Isaac Guerendo in a middle that was available a few days ago. Gave that out in a WHOP, and a few guys definitely got down on that as well. So let's hope that Guerendo goes for 50 yards. I actually suspect he's going to go over because I suspect the Lions aren't going to try that much. And Guerendo's like a third string running back as well with limited health in front of him. So he's going to get a lot of work tonight. All right, let's go through the comments. JB says, I miss the show on the weekends. I forget and I keep checking YouTube. Maybe, JB, when football season ends, we will start doing things on the weekends. When playing spreads, would I rather have the points or the VIG? Example, minus 27 at minus 110, or when playing spreads, Mr. Norman, if you're still here, I don't know what spread you're playing at minus 27 or 28.5. Certain spots, I see you're pointing out differences in the VIG. Certain spots are worth certain amounts of VIG, so it's important to know. 1.5 points. I don't know what. I'm confused to what example that is. Taylor says Mike Brown was not the problem. Fox will not be a King after the season. That seems for sure. Where is Fox gonna go? I have some ideas. Houston. Can we solve a problem? Is Fox the perfect piece to replace Fred VanVleet? If the guy Reed Shepherd is more of an off-ball shooter and, you know, a Peyton Pritchard role and not a future Steph Curry, like some people tried to anoint him during draft season, is De'Aaron Fox your finisher that you need in Houston to come in and run with Alpi, those screen and rolls, and kick out to some amazing, amazing wing defenders around him? I would say Houston would be an amazing landing spot for De'Aaron Fox. I would look towards Brooklyn trying to build something with him because we know he's very close with Jordi Fernandez, the Nets coach. Interesting to think where Fox is going to go. I would say Miami probably gets its hat in the Fox ring because they'll go in for any superstar, and Fox is that borderline superstar. If you're going to start replacing Jimmy, if you're going to start moving on from Hero in a year or two, Terry Rozier, like if you're looking for the next person to pair with Bam Adebayo, and you want to bring in De'Aaron Fox and maybe figure out one other piece, and that's another swing for Pat Riley to make. One last gasp for Riley. Don't count the Heat out. Be very interesting to see. It would be very. And let's go one more. Spurs. Does Fox find his way to pair himself with Wemby? Because who's going to do it? What superstar is going to go? There's going to be a player who's coming up on his extension who says it's going to be smart as shit for me to sign with the Spurs. And look at Chris Paul on his 1 year, $11 million deal. And there being a starting point guard spot remaining there. And Fox playing off ball very well and playing like 2 point guard lineups with ball handlers like Malik Monk, with Tyrese Halliburton in the past, with Davion Mitchell in the past. Like he's often shared the court with other point guards. And if you're developing Stephon Castle into this off-guard, big point guy who could run the point, but also play a little bit off-guard, a little bit kind of Drew Holiday-esque type of player, then Fox and Wemby makes a lot of sense too. Like these are discussions that I love. I can have them with myself on a podcast. Mr. Norman says college basketball he is referring to. I do not bet college stuff. So I am not sure the answer to know if that 1.5 is worth your 10 cents. Ian says OKC to pair with SGA. I think OKC is very comfortable with Cason Wallace and his future development. Mr. Norman, I understand the question, but I don't know the answer based on college basketball value. Although, thank you for the correction, because understanding that we were talking about a minus 28.5 versus a minus 27 totally applies to college basketball. That does not apply to the NBA. But I don't really know the college numbers. And I think this is a good point to emphasize that nothing in college simulates what happens in the pro betting. Like, you don't really use, like, you could use travel, you could use rest advantage, you could use some of that stuff. You could use 4 factors for NBA statistic stuff. But like you don't use NBA key numbers to define college basketball. Why? Because they shoot 1-and-1s, not 2 free throws when you get to the bonus every time. Because their free throw efficiency is different. Because their 3-point line is 2 feet closer. So the efficiency is different. The volume is different. So for a lot of these reasons, you can't equate the two. Where you can kind of equate the two is WNBA and NBA. However, WNBA is more talent disparity between the teams, so you get further discrepancy. But just in terms of gameplay, and there's 8 minutes less in the game, but in terms of like gameplay, 3-point efficiency, free throw efficiency, it's actually pretty similar. So watch the W because it's a fucking great game. We'll be betting it. We'll be doing shows. I don't understand it for college, and that's true for college football as it relates to the NFL. People try and do Wong teaser legs for college football, bringing in a plus 2.5 college football dog to plus 8.5. That's not a Wong teaser. A Wong teaser is for betting the NFL. Read the book, Sharp Sports Betting by Stanford Wong. His real name is John Ferguson. That's his pen name, but he's written a ton of books, so we'll call him Stanford Wong around here when we're talking about him in the betting space. So go read his book, Sharp Sports Betting. It's probably one of the books that I'd say people most often reference without actually fucking reading. Like, the amount of people that try and explain to me what Wong teasers are and try and tell me about the book. I'm like, what else? Give me one other thing the book said besides cross through the 3 and the 7. How does home field advantage play into that? What about total once it reaches the number 50? They're all slight caveats within Wong teasers. What about different time windows? Read the book. All right, that will do it for today's show. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you to Ian in the back. Mr. Norman says, sitting here on my nightstand, that book. Mr. Norman, I'll wait 10 seconds in the comment. Is it actually, has it been read? Because this would be classic example. I didn't know it was so heavily NFL oriented. Therefore, I'm going to say it's not that read. Not calling you out. I'm just saying it's the most common thing. Have I read it cover to cover? No. I'm not saying I have either. But you don't hear me saying I read the book cover to cover and this is everything it said. I've read all of what I feel are the important parts and I skip parts myself. But it is definitely NFL stuff, especially the teaser section, which is what comes out of that book to be the most prominent that you can't find in other places. Like there's bankroll management stuff. There's understanding market stuff in there too. All right. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. We have some words from Patrick Beverly. Thank you to Ian in the back. I know Ian likes a little James Harden assist prop for tonight. If anyone's looking for one last gas prop to bet based on the show, we went over the lines that we'd like. Mavericks money line still feels playable. There you go. The 76ers 5.5 and FanDuel is gone. If there's still any remaining 5.5s, that would be playable. Knicks over 229.5 potentially playable as well based on the current lines. Thank you to everyone for being here. We will be back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time with Drew Johnson, professional poker player, reviewing the card then. A host of other fun topics for me and Drew to discuss. We might do Eastern Conference All-Stars because we did Western Conference All-Stars on Friday. And projecting some of these teams. This is the time of the year where you can start to wonder who's going to make the All-Star team and then say who's on the bubble and have fun with that. Maybe we'll do that on the show. Some other fun NBA things to consider. Thank you to everyone. Peace out.
Y'all subscribe to my podcast while y'all asking all these questions. Don't forget to subscribe to the pod. And if you're a kid, listen to your parents. Listen to your parents.
Listen to your parents.
Subscribe to the pod. Subscribe.
Subscribe to the pod. Subscribe to the pod. Subscribe to the pod, man. No. Good, those are good.